Hello, and welcome to our program, Astronomy for Everyone. With us here in the studio for this month's show is fellow Ford Amateur Astronomy Club member, Bob Clubb, who has many years of experience in the Hammond Planetarium at Henry Ford Community College in Dearborn, Michigan. Bob, welcome to the show.
Well, thanks.
Glad to have you here.
Glad to be here.
Now, why don't we start off and have you tell our viewers about your first lesson in astronomy?
Well, I've always been interested in astronomy all through, in my young days, and that 7, 8 years old. And back then, we used to go to Port Huron in the summertime because both my parents came from Port Huron, and we would spend a week in my grandmother's, and my uncle lived above a flat on the upper stairs. And he'd come home from work, and then he'd go downstairs, sit on the porch, have a cigarette and a beer, and talk to my dad. And one of these days, one of those nights, he kind of looks up and he says, points to this really bright star, and he says, "You see that bright star up there?" And I go, "Yeah." And he says, "You know what?" He says, that's the North Star." He says, "You look in the sky, find this brightest star in the sky, that's the North Star." And I said, "But Uncle Hank, that's where the sun set, that's west." Okay, that's when he threw the beer bottle at me. But,
hopefully he missed.
Well, yeah, but the thing is, even though my first astronomy lesson was wrong, I still had a very valuable lesson in life. Never argue with anyone with a bottle in their hand.
Exactly. So how did you become involved with the Hammond Planetarium?
Well, I have the Ford Astronomy Club to blame for that. Okay.
Or thank, depending
or
on
thank.
Yeah.
Excuse me. Dennis Saliat, one of our fellow members, we were at a meeting, and he was asking for people to volunteer at the planetarium. At that time, it was just the Henry Ford College Planetarium. And I said, well, what the heck? So I went over there, talked to Mike LaPresto and Steve Morrell.
Yep.
And working with Dennis, started doing the shows. And I really became more of an astronomer because of it. Okay, I became a more avid astronomer because I wanted to share my passion for astronomy. And kind of, when I tell people at the planetarium, I says, I want to reintroduce them to the awe, wonder, and majesty of the night sky. And it's really kind of hard around here because we really don't have a lot of stars in that. But in the planetarium, you can go out where there are no lights in that, and they can actually see the stars as they were meant to be seen.
Exactly, without all of the light pollution.
Mm-hmm.
So since winter season is coming up soon, I'm sure that you'll be gearing up to do your winter show, and that's what we're going to take a look at now. So where do we begin?
Well, hopefully the school will be open to the public, in which time we can do planetarium shows again. Right now, it's closed to the public, so we're unable to do any planetarium shows. But we can still talk about the winter sky.
Exactly.
Okay, and when we do that, I would say we want to start out with probably the most famous constellation, easily seen constellation that people can see, which is Orion the Hunter.
Exactly.
Okay, Orion is marked by 3 stars in a great straight line, very bright stars in the sky. And that, so if you see those stars and it's a straight line, you'll know exactly where Orion is, and it's the Hunter. If you turn around and look at the top above the stars to the left, you'll see a reddish orange star. That's the star Betelgeuse, just like in the movie.
Yeah.
Okay, and Betelgeuse is a giant star. Okay, I'm sorry, it's a supergiant star. And the difference between a giant star and a supergiant star is giant stars are generally around 10 times or more, at least 10 times bigger than our sun. Okay, stars 100 times bigger than our sun are generally called supergiants, and then there's some that are in the thousands, which are called hypergiants. Okay, but in the winter skies, we see Orion, and it's actually one of the brightest constellations around, and there's a couple of reasons for that. The first is you're looking below the plane of the galaxy, so you don't have a lot of other stars in the way.
Yeah, the Milky Way is
the Milky Way is above.
Right.
Okay, and the other thing is that actually almost every star in that constellation is either a giant or a supergiant star. So that's what makes it so bright and also very easy to find. Okay? If we were to go out into space and go to Betelgeuse, if you were to replace our sun with Betelgeuse, Earth wouldn't exist.
Is that right?
It would actually be inside the star, along with Mercury, Venus, and Mars.
So the whole inner solar system.
The whole inner solar system. And actually, Jupiter would be just around on the outside of it, orbiting around the outside. And that's how big that star is. And that, so it kind of gives you an idea. Betelgeuse is what 500 times bigger than our own sun. And our sun is 865 million miles across. It's 865,000 miles across. Okay, so, and that's still it's called a dwarf star. Okay. Going back, if you go back to the constellation, or looking at Orion and looking at the three stars, to the bottom left, to bottom right, you'll see another very bright star there, and that's the star Rigel. Okay,
Yes.
Rigel is about 20 times bigger than our sun. So it's still a big, bright star and stuff like that. It's not a giant, a supergiant star, but it's one of the brighter stars that you can see in that, and that marks his bottom foot. Okay. If you look above Betelgeuse at the constellation, you can actually see Orion holding a club, okay, like he's fighting something.
Right.
Okay. If you look where Rigel is, above Rigel, you can see where he's holding a shield or a pelt in that.
Yes.
Like he's fighting something. He's actually going against fighting Taurus, the bull. Okay. If you look at Orion, underneath the middle star of the belt, you'll see the sword of Orion. Okay. And the sword of Orion, there's actually going to be a star there, but it's not really a star. If you go in the dark skies, it's not going to look like a star. It's going to be fuzzy. It's actually a nebula. It's a nursery for stars. If you have enough mass from a star that explodes when it dies, and that it leaves all this gas and dust out there. Once that cools down, gravity can take over and start pulling it back again, and new stars are born out of it. So the death of one star leads to the life of a new star. Okay. If you can't see it, get a pair of binoculars. But if you were in a dark sky, you'd actually see that that star is kind of hazy out there.
I've noticed that myself being
Right.
observing. Sure.
Okay. Now, the constellation Orion has different cultures looked at it different ways. The Egyptians, for example, that was Osiris, their god.
Right.
Okay. If you go to Australia, okay, in Australia, Orion is actually upside down.
Exactly.
So the
Yes,
sword is
yes, it
facing up. And to them, the three stars that they see there is actually three brothers in a canoe. They were part of a tribe known as the kingfish. And that was their sacred fish. And they were out fishing, and as luck would have it, every fish they caught was a kingfish. And the brother was one of the brothers was so hungry, he said, heck with it, I'm going to eat it.
So apparently, though, the kingfish were sacred. So
They were sacred, so they could not eat the kingfish.
Okay.
Okay. Well, what happened was they got so angry and so hungry, the one brother said, I'm going to eat the fish. The gods saw that and put them up in the sky forever as a warning to others not to do that. Okay. If you go back to Orion, it says in Greek mythology, Orion was a legendary hunter who was the son of Neptune, as the god of the sea. While hunting in Crete with the huntress god Artemis, he was so enthusiastic he declared that he could kill all the animals, and that, which really offended the gods. They didn't want him killing off all the animals.
Well, especially Gaia, the earth goddess.
Yeah. She actually created a huge scorpion that came up and stung Orion in the leg and killed him. So because he had died, what they did, the gods put both of them in the sky, but at opposite sides of the sky, so they would never see one another again.
And avoid any future trouble.
Yeah, but there's still some things that says nature has a way of winning, okay?
Okay.
And what happens is there's something called Gould's Belt. It's actually a huge donut-shaped cloud. You think of it like a donut going through a coffee cup. And it connects Orion, and it connects Orion with Scorpio. So all of those stars and that, they're actually there. And the other thing is, as Scorpio sets, Betelgeuse, Orion, Scorpio sets, Orion is rising. So
being on opposite
being
sides
on
of the
opposite
sky.
sides.
Yeah.
So either Orion is trying to catch Scorpio and kill him again, or he's running away from it, depending on your point of view.
Exactly. It really makes for an interesting story. This has been a very interesting conversation, Bob. What we're going to do right now, though, is take a quick break. If you have a question, please send us an email. As you can see at the bottom of the screen, our email address is there. And we'll be back right after Term of the Month with Stephen.
Thanks, Don. The term of the month is DART, the Double Asteroid Redirection Test Mission. The NASA DART mission was to launch Wednesday, November 24th from Vandenberg on a SpaceX Falcon 9 rocket. After something like a year of cruise in space, it will impact the 60-meter moon of the 780-meter Didymos asteroid. This moon has been chosen because it is typical of the size of asteroids that could threaten Earth. The idea is that Earth telescopes will observe the change of the orbit. The orbital period should change by several minutes. The mission tests technologies needed for an impact mission. These include the twin ROSA, which stands for Rollout Solar Arrays. These are nearly 50 square meters of solar cell. The Draco camera is based on the LORRI high-resolution camera from New Horizons. The next engine is an electric propulsion system derived from the Dawn spacecraft ion drive. And that is DART, Double Asteroid Redirection Test Mission, the term of the month. Back to you, Don.
Thanks, Stephen. We're back with Bob Clubb, a member of the Ford Amateur Astronomy Club and a presenter at the Hammond Planetarium at the Henry Ford College in Dearborn, Michigan. So, Bob, let's pick it up again.
Okay, well, let's start out so going back to Orion, using the belt of Orion. If you follow the stars of the belt up, you'll point to Aldebaran, which is in the constellation Taurus the Bull. Okay, Aldebaran is actually the red star, the angry eye of the bull.
Exactly.
If you continue on a little bit further, you'll find a group of stars called the Pleiades. It's actually a star cluster. It's known as the Seven Sisters. Okay, and there are various stories about it. But if you look up there, even though they call it the Seven Sisters, you're only going to see 6 stars.
So why do they call them the Seven Sisters?
Well, the reason is this. Okay, the legend is that there were 7 sisters, and they would come down to Earth through a mountain that had a passageway, and when they did that, they would hunt on the Earth. And there was an old man who wanted a wife, and when he saw them, he was going after them, and as they went to go up, he grabbed the youngest daughter, the youngest sister, and took her for a wife. But what happened was when she ran away, she managed to get away every now and then. And she does show up. But what it is actually the planet Venus. Okay?
And because of the Pleiades' proximity to the zodiac.
Right. Right. And because of that, it actually goes through there. And every 8 years, the planet Venus actually goes through the Pleiades. So the 7th sister comes back.
Venus, but
right.
Again, the 7th sister.
Right. And that one's from Australia. There's also another story about the Pleiades where, again, the 7 sisters, but it was in Indian times. And if you look at the Devil's Tower, what happened is that in that time, they were being chased by a bear and trying to get away. And so the gods actually lifted the ground up. And what you see on the Devil's Tower are the claw marks of the bear trying to get after them.
Yeah, it's very distinctive out there in Wyoming.
So right, so you have all these different stories about the same thing from different cultures and that.
Exactly.
Okay, I could go on, but one of the things in astronomy is trying to give people the understanding about the differences and the distances that people are dealing with. It's kind of hard to grasp.
Right. People look at it and they almost think it's just two-dimensional.
Well, not only that, but you say it's hard to get an idea how big and how far apart things are. Okay, you say a light year, they go, okay, so it's almost 6 trillion miles. Doesn't mean anything. So I use models. Okay, and what I do is I'm using a couple of aspirins, regular adult-sized aspirins.
Okay.
Okay, I find this is there's different stories, places, but on average, I found it's about 4.5 light years is about the average distance between the stars. So if I were to take our sun, which is almost 1 million miles, and let's make it 1 million miles,
Okay.
and I shrunk that 1 million mile star down to the size of an aspirin, about 1/4 of an inch, I can start to show you what the distance or the light year is.
Okay.
Okay, so if I had an aspirin, I gave you an aspirin,
All right.
and say I'm in the planetarium, I give you the aspirin and says, I need you to get in your car and drive to Okemos, drive out to Lansing,
Yeah.
take the Okemos exit. When you get there, pull out the side and call me. And then we'll raise our hands up. You'll be 81 miles away from me. So if you shrunk that 1 million mile star down to the size of an aspirin, you could actually kind of get an idea. But if you make it smaller, if you make it down to the size of a grain of dust, so small you can hardly see it, we can go to a football field. And I could have you stand on one goal line and me stand on the other. And that's the average distance. That's 4.5 light years showing you.
Scaled down to 100 yards.
But you can't even see the star.
Wow.
Okay?
Wow.
But we can use that very same aspirin for other things too.
Okay.
Okay, galaxies, they're huge, hundreds of thousands of light years across. Okay, at those size, scales is that, and we shrink those things down, we can do something very easily. The closest galaxy we have to the Milky Way is the Andromeda galaxy.
Right.
It's getting closer every day, but it's around 2.5 million light years. So if we had these galaxies, which are 100,000 light years across, and shrunk them down to 1/4 inch,
Again, the aspirins.
the aspirins.
Yeah.
If you hold them out about 3 feet across, that's how far apart they are at that scale.
Wow.
Okay, but even though we talk about light and how fast it is, it doesn't even give you an idea to appreciate how big our universe is. Okay, because we talk, it says it takes light time to get places. It takes 8.5 minutes for light to reach us from the sun. Okay, it takes 1.3 seconds for us to see the light reflected from the sun, from the moon, to come back to us. Okay, so one of the reasons I think it's be kind of hard for us to communicate with anyone is we have to wait so long.
Right.
Okay, if you went to the nearest star, you're going to have to wait 4.5 years, 4.3 years, just to have them pick up the phone. So if they dial it, if you knew someone and dialed it and you called out there, it'll take 4.3 years for that to happen. Then they're going to have to pick it up, and probably they're not going to answer because they're going to figure it's nothing more than somebody telling them that their warranty's out of existence. So that's why we don't hear from them, But those are the types of things, if you start looking about those things. But if you start looking at things, I like looking at things a little bit differently, okay? Like take a look at our moon, okay?
Sure.
Okay? The moon does not create any light of its own. It actually just reflects the light coming at us from the sun.
Exactly.
So in effect, and one way of looking at it is the sun is really moonlighting.
Okay.
Okay.
Never thought about it that way.
You have to look at it that way.
Okay.
Okay? And you see how bright the moon is.
Sure.
But in reality, if you were to go to an old beat-up asphalt parking lot, that's what the surface of the moon looks like. But because it's the star, there's blackness behind it, it makes it look so much brighter to us.
Yep. So it's albedo, its brightness is not really all that great, but by comparison.
By comparison to everything else that's out there, that's one of those things, one of those reasons why those things are that way. Okay, so I'll talk about one other star in that, if I may, and that is going back to our constellation. If you go and take the stars of the belt and this time go to the left, it takes you to a really bright star. They're called Sirius. Okay?
You're serious about that name.
I'm serious about that. And take this seriously. Sirius is called the dog star because it's in Canis Major, the big dog. Okay? But you've heard the dog days of summer?
Sure, sure.
It's the same reason. To the ancients, okay, they didn't realize what caused the summers to be so hot. The sun's constant. Why is it hot in some part of the season and not in the others? They had no idea that our Earth was tilted.
And being the cause of the seasons, right?
It had to be something else. So to them, they noticed that just before, when the summers really got hot, in the very early mornings, Sirius was rising. So to them, that's what the cause of the heat was. It wasn't the sun. It's because of another star.
The dog star
The
and
dog said the dog days.
dog days of summer.
Okay.
Well, there you go.
So
There
you know,
go.
those are different things that I like telling people about when I do shows in planetarium, things that they may not be aware of in that.
Yeah, things that are used colloquially.
Right.
Where did it come from?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. There's a lot of different stories out there about, you know, and you could go out on the internet and find tons of stories about all the different constellations or asterisms and stuff like that.
Exactly. I mean, each culture has a unique set of stories about the same stars that we look at.
Exactly. And, you know, when we talk about asterisms, one of the most famous ones, of course, is the Big Dipper.
Yep.
Okay. And on the Big Dipper, we notice it because we can see the 4 stars for the Dipper part and the 3 stars for the handle.
Right.
Okay. Okay. Well, the tail, the handle, they say that's the tail of the bear.
Right.
I've never seen a bear with a big tail.
No, they don't.
Okay.
No, they
If you
don't have
ask the
those.
Greeks, what they did is says, well, the gods grabbed the bears by the tails and swung them around and swung them around, and by the time they let them go, their tails grew. Okay. The Navajos said, the big bear and little bear are chasing one another in the sky, nipping at each other's tails, and through the millennia, their tails grew.
Ah, okay.
Okay. But there's another Indian tribe in the St. Lawrence Seaway area called the Micmac, and to them, the big bear has no tail. The bear is the 4 stars in that. The other ones are Indian braves chasing after the bear.
In the hunt.
In the hunt.
Yeah.
The first one is named Robin. The second star in the handle is called Chickadee. And if you look, he's carrying a cooking pot. The fire star is Jaybird. And they chase the bear around the skies all through the year. But in the autumn, what happens, the bear raises up. Robin shoots the arrow, hits the bear, it's covered with blood. He gets a red breast, and he shakes it off, and this is why the leaves turn red in the autumn.
Fascinating.
Yeah.
Fascinating indeed. Yeah. You know, Bob, this has been a great discussion. I love hearing the stories about the different cultures and their stories about the constellations. And viewers, I hope you've enjoyed it as well. Again, thank you, Bob, for being on today. If you would like to check out our website, we always put that down at the bottom of the screen on each show. So please check out the Ford Club website. And coming up to finish up the show, as always, is Stephen with What's Up in the Night Sky.
Thanks, Don. What's up in the night sky for December 2021? The sun goes from Ophiuchus to Sagittarius over the course of this month. And you go, what is that? Ophiuchus isn't a zodiac constellation? Well, that's the way it is. We have the winter solstice on December 21st. The lengths of the day and the night don't change a whole lot. Let's move to the moons. The month starts with a new moon on the 4th, a first quarter on the 10th, a full moon on the 18th, and the third quarter on the 26th. Now Mars goes from Libra to Ophiuchus, so you go, oh, Ophiuchus, that's where the sun is. Yes, it's very close to the sun. It rises 1 to 2 hours before the sun. It's a little better at the end of the month because it rises earlier than the sun at the end of the month. Then we have the whole string of planets in the night sky. Uranus is in Aries, where it's been for quite a while. It sets 3 to 5 hours before the sun rises. Uranus had opposition in November on the 4th, and so it was up all night. It's still up most of the night. Jupiter goes from Capricornus to Aquarius, where you'll find our friend Neptune, because Neptune is always in Aquarius, and it sets 3 to 4 hours after the sun does. Neptune is also there, and it sets around the same time that Jupiter does. Saturn is in Capricornus and stays there all month. It sets 2 hours after the sun. Pluto is in Sagittarius. It is best at the beginning of the month. It has superior conjunction coming up on January 16th. This is not the time of year to be looking for Pluto, but big scope and all of that. Venus is in Sagittarius. And it is best also at the beginning of the month, and it sets 2 hours to an hour after the sun's. Venus's orbit is weird. It's inside. It goes around the sun faster than the Earth does, so it does the opposite things. Now, not visible is Mercury. Mercury is in Ophiuchus, where the sun is, to Sagittarius, but superior conjunction was, we just had it on November 28th. I was looking to get Mercury in at the beginning of the month, and I just couldn't get it to be on the slides, so it's going to be very hard to see. And that is what's up in the night sky for December 2021. Remember, we don't charge money for this show, but we may tax your brain.